Hello and welcome to another episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. Today I am going to talk about gut health, and the reason for this is I feel like it has slightly fallen out of fashion in the nutrition world, in the sense that everyone seems to be focusing a lot on protein, at least in my little world. And I thought it's time to bring back the gut health chat. I also am talking about this because I just had a final consultation with a one-to-one client, and she said to me, I'm really fascinated by all things gut health. Can you give me a quick overview about it? And I was like, wow, I can't do it quickly. That's kind of, the specialty of nutritional therapists. But I thought, no, do you know what? The work that we have been doing together over the last 4 months does really encompass a lot of what is going to build a healthy gut. The thing is, when we think about gut health, we often just think, what supplements can I take for my good gut bacteria? What are the good things I can make sure that my bacteria need to be healthy? But there's so much more to gut health than just what your gut bacteria is doing. So I thought I would give, in this episode, I wanted to give an overview of the whole system, the whole digestive system, and why that's important for gut health as a whole. So gut health is at the heart of overall well-being, playing a really crucial role in supporting your immune system, your mental health, and your resilience to stress. The gut is often called the second brain because it has such a powerful impact on your mental health. The gut and brain communicate through what's known as the gut-brain axis, and a healthy gut can influence your mood, your stress response, and even your sleep. And the other really key thing about gut health is about 70% of your immune system resides in the gut, meaning a really well-functioning digestive system is essential for defending against illnesses and maintaining a balanced immune response. And this is so important as we come into winter, as we come into, the season of snot. Kids are going back to school or back to childcare, and it is so common for us as mums to get completely floored by the colds that they bring back. But it doesn't have to be that way, and I think if we can spend a bit of time looking after our gut, we might have a better response to it. Another factor is chronic stress. It can really compromise that gut-brain connection and disrupt your digestion, leading to problems like bloating, poor nutrient absorption, and of course a weakened immune system as well. So that's why I always talk about sleep and stress whenever I talk about nutrition. You just can't remove how important it is from each other. When you think about gut health, it's really important to consider how interconnected the whole digestive process is, starting with signals from the brain before you even open your mouth to eat, which prepares the stomach and the intestines to know that it's about to receive some food so that it can break it down, absorb the nutrients efficiently and effectively. It starts in the brain, and it's all linked. It's really important that your brain and your digestive system is working in harmony. The brain part of your digestion is known as the cephalic phase of digestion, and it's where your brain starts sending the message to your stomach and your gut that it's time to get ready for food. And this helps them to secrete the right enzymes and the right juices and the right secretions to digest, to assimilate, to absorb, and to metabolize the components of the food that it needs, and then to get rid of any waste. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk you through that whole system and the key things that you can do to make sure that it stays healthy. So my first top kind of priority when it comes to healthy digestion is making sure that you practice mindful eating. Now, mindful eating is a bit of a all-encompassing phrase really, but it involves paying close attention to your food and how it makes you feel. Focusing on your meal can really help to support healthy digestion, and also can help you really spend a bit of time distinguishing between physical hunger and emotional hunger. And this in turn can really help regulate any issues that you have with maybe overeating or disordered eating patterns, and it could even make it easier to manage your weight. So some really simple ways to get started with mindful eating is to just acknowledge your food, honor your food. Think about where the food was grown and what it took to get to you, to come to your table. And then think about why you're eating. Are you truly hungry? And is the food that you've chosen going to help with that hunger? Or is it emotional, and is it going to do something completely different than just satisfy a stomach hunger? Eat more slowly. Taking time to appreciate your food and savor each bite is really key to mindful eating. And it's kind of chicken and egg. When you practice mindful eating, you naturally slow down. And when you naturally slow down, you naturally become more mindful of what your food is doing for you. Use all of your senses. Think about how the food looks, the sound of the food as you bite into it, maybe the texture of it, the smell of it, and of course the taste of it. Using all of your senses is going to help your brain, that cephalic phase of digestion, to get kick-started. Eliminate distractions. So really make eating your main event. When you sit down to eat a meal, make it the only thing you're doing, or at least your main focus. So turn off your TV, put your phone in another room, and eat away from your desk if you can. Of course, eating is also a very social and communal focused event. So don't think that you can't talk to people. That is also important for other reasons as well. But things like the TV or your phone or being at your desk in front of your computer is really going to distract your brain from the actual eating, and that is going to be more likely for you to overeat or not think about where your food is coming from. Focus on how the food makes you feel, both during and after the meal. Stop eating when you're almost full. This is much easier to assess if you have actually been eating slowly and consciously paying attention to your food. And then my second tip, which is linked to the mindful eating, but I think deserves a sort of place of its own, is making sure that you are chewing enough. There was this brilliant quote that I learned in a webinar once, which was, drink your food and chew your liquid. And the idea being that we must eat our food, chew our food enough so that you can almost drink it down, that it's so liquid that you just can drink it down rather than having to swallow a large chunk of food. Chewing is a really vital part of digestion, and the saliva contains the first digestive enzymes that your food is going to encounter. And the mouth is also the only place where food is broken down mechanically, meaning that it is literally broken into smaller and smaller components by your teeth. So you need to chew as much as you can, ideally around 30 times a mouthful, until the food is completely broken down and there are no recognizable chunks. Now, this is actually much harder than you think. It's going to take time and perseverance to make this a habit. Most of us chew less than 10 times before we kind of get bored of the feeling in our mouth and we just swallow it and want the next mouthful straight away. So the other reason why chewing is so important is the act of chewing also triggers the rest of the digestive system. The lower stomach muscles relax and release the food, and the pancreas produces enzymes, and these all are really important to make sure that your food is digested properly. And then the other really key part of chewing your food enough is that the nutrients can't be properly extracted from your food if they haven't been chewed enough. And this is where you might see undigested pieces of food in your poo, later on, or, the next day. And this isn't a great thing, because it means that you've missed out on a whole load of nutrients, for one, but also those undigested pieces of food can serve as food for the bacteria that you don't want to start growing in your gut, and this can lead to bacterial overgrowth and flatulence and just bacteria in the wrong places, essentially. So how do you try and add in more chewing? So I see this as a 3-step process, basically. So step 1, without changing anything at all, count how many times you chew a mouthful of food naturally without thinking about it. Step 2, add an extra 5 chews per mouthful. So every time you take a mouthful of food, count how many times you naturally chew for, and then add on another 5. And then keep adding 5 extra chews per mouthful every day or every few days until you get to that 30 chews per mouthful. It's going to take time and you will forget, but the more you can do it, the more often you can do it, the more it becomes a habit, and the more you just end up doing it. And then food is completely broken down and you don't get those recognizable chunks in there. And that is going to be great for your digestive system, so to make sure that it digests it properly. The third aspect here is eating food that support digestive secretions. So these are the foods that naturally help your digestive system to produce the juices and the enzymes and everything it needs to actually digest the food. So these are bitter and sour foods. They really help to stimulate your stomach acid and the other digestive juices. Now, if you just spend a few minutes now closing your eyes and imagine that you're picking up a lemon from your fruit bowl, for example, and you take a knife and you cut it in half, and then you bring that lemon up to your nose and smell it. And then you take your knife again and slice a thin slice of lemon. And then put that in your mouth and take a bite of that lemon. What do you experience? Just imagining that lemon in your mouth. What did you experience? Now, naturally, your mouth probably immediately started filling up with saliva. You literally salivated at the thought of eating that lemon. And it's completely involuntary. You just imagined eating something sour. You didn't actually eat that lemon, right? And this is true when you actually eat the lemon or actually eat bitter food. Eating a small amount of bitter and sour food at the beginning of a meal really helps to prepare the body to digest the rest of the meal, because it starts producing all those enzymes, producing all those digestive juices that are really, really important for that. So what do I mean when I talk about bitter food? So it's things like lemons, apple cider vinegar, any vinegar, but also bitter and astringent food like artichoke, aubergine, bitter melon, blood orange, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, chicory. There's kind of bittery greens like rocket and watercress. Coffee is also another bitter thing. Dark chocolate, but it needs to be really dark, like 90% of cocoa and above. And then spices like fenugreek and ginger. And then a drink like green tea. These are all bitter drinks and bitter foods that can really help with those digestive juices. Making a really kind of bitter salad with things like radicchio, chicory, watercress, rocket can really, at the start of the meal, maybe with a dressing of lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, is a really great way to get those bitter and sour foods in. You could have grapefruit or blood orange at breakfast time, which is, used to be quite a common breakfast food. You could have stewed rhubarb in your overnight oats, or you could add fresh cranberries to them as well, or into your porridge. You could add spices like fenugreek and turmeric to Indian dishes, and just try having a portion of bitter vegetables with each main meal. We've become accustomed to having quite sweet flavoured food in our meals, and so we have potentially lost the enjoyment of bitter food. But trying to have one portion of bitter vegetables every main meal, or having that bitter salad with that sour dressing, can really help there. And having your coffee, but don't add loads and loads of sugar and milk. Have it black. That's the bitter stuff that is going to really help you. And of course, if you are drinking coffee, don't have a caffeinated version after midday. What you could also do is have a couple of squares of very, very dark chocolate, and that's really going to help with that digestion as well. Okay, so we've talked about digestion. We've talked about the cephalic phase. That's where you start off with what your brain does when it thinks about food. We've talked about mechanically chewing in your mouth, and then we've talked about preparing your stomach using food. But now let's talk about the gut, the microbiome, probably the thing you think about when you think about good gut health, right? So what do we mean when we talk about foods that are going to help with good gut health? So we talk about prebiotic and probiotic foods. They are both important for maintaining a healthy gut. The majority of your bacteria in the gut lives in the large intestine, and it's an ever-shifting, ever-changing environment. In general, you want to encourage a healthy bacteria population in your gut by feeding it the food that the bacteria like to eat and replacing it with live bacteria that you might find in food. So we often hear about good and bad bacteria, but in reality, it's a lot more complex than that. It's not so black and white. And actually, it's all about balance. It's about the relative population of favourable bacteria as a ratio of less favourable bacteria. Some so-called bad bacteria can actually be beneficial unless there's too much of them. And actually, it's about having enough good bacteria to help keep that more harmful bacteria population in check. So probiotic food is where you find live bacteria in the food itself, whereas prebiotics are a type of fibre that feed the friendly bacteria in your gut. Eating foods or maybe even taking supplements containing both of these can really help balance your gut bacteria and promote that healthy digestive system that we're looking for. So what food do we mean when we talk about probiotic foods? So these are your fermented foods, and you probably know some of them, and there might be some that are new to you. So these are natural sources of good bacteria and can help maintain that healthy gut flora. So we're talking about yogurt, live yogurt, kefir, live cheeses, sauerkraut, miso, lacto-fermented pickles, kimchi, olives, tempeh, naturally fermented soy sauce like tamari. So these are the foods that if you can try and include once or twice a day is really going to help with your gut bacteria population. And then prebiotic food. So these are natural prebiotics that feed the friendly bacteria in your gut. And so these are things quite similar, actually, some of the foods to the food that we talked about just now in the digestive system. So that's things like artichokes and asparagus, banana, chicory, dandelion greens, dark green leafy vegetables, flax seeds, garlic, green beans, Jerusalem artichoke. And then you can also get these fibers from cooked and cooled rice and potatoes as well. The structure of these change when you eat them, when you let them cool down and then you eat them, and that is really beneficial for the gut bacteria. The key thing with both probiotics and prebiotics is to have a wide variety. It's not really enough to just eat yogurt every single day or just drink kefir every single day. It's about getting a big range of probiotic food. Go for small, regular portions of different therapeutic foods like this to encourage that diversity in your gut microbiota, because different fermented food is going to have different colonies of bacteria in there that's going to be beneficial to your gut bacteria. When it comes to introducing new foods like fermented food and prebiotic food as well, go small, start small, because you might find that your digestive system is just not used to this new food, and you might find that you get really bloated or you get really uncomfortable as well. So my next tip is to avoid stressing the gut microflora. So what do I mean by that? So as we know, the gut microbiome is this really complex ecosystem. There's apparently an estimation of 100 trillion microorganisms in there. And these are really important for your digestion, for your metabolism, your immune modulation. But that kind of gets disrupted when that natural balance of the microbiota just isn't quite right. So this is where you might get an overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria, you might get the wrong kind of flora in there, or you might get yeast and molds that you really don't want in there. This is what we call dysbiosis, and dysbiosis can really contribute to an increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome, systemic inflammation, changes in appetite and the way that you store fat, changes in your hormones, and compromised immunity, and lots of other aspects of health as well. So you might get symptoms like nausea and constipation or diarrhea, you might get bloating and gas, fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, depression. There's a huge range of symptoms that might happen when you see dysbiosis. And the gut microflora can become imbalanced when it is stress. So that's what I mean by avoid stressing the gut microflora. And this can be stressed by a poor diet, one that is, too high in sugar, for example, too much refined carbohydrates. That can help to favor the growth of less beneficial bacterial species. If you don't have enough fiber and plant foods, essentially. If you don't have enough stomach acid, maybe you don't have enough bile flowing through you, maybe your pancreatic function isn't great, that can all cause undigested food in the gut, and this can act as a food source for the overgrowth of microorganisms that you really don't want, which I mentioned before. Antibiotics, obviously that is going to potentially kill all of the flora in your gut. Some medical treatments can do that. Alcohol, regular alcohol consumption can change the composition of the gut microbiome. Apparently within 30 minutes of drinking alcohol, bacteria, endotoxin levels rise, which can cause inflammation. And these alcohol-induced changes in the gut microbiota are potentially what contributes to development of alcoholic liver disease and other diseases as well. Stress is a huge problem for the gut microbiome because it can alter the profile and activity of the so-called good bacteria in your gut. And then chronic stress is associated with reduced diversity in the microbiome and increased intestinal permeability as well. And then finally, inflammation. Inflammation has a really significant impact on the gut microflora and is closely linked with the development of inflammatory diseases and obesity. And these kind of inflammatory markers can change the composition of the gut microbiome, which can cause changes in your gut barrier function and potentially lead even more down towards that leaky gut issues. My next tip around making sure that your gut microbiome is healthy is to boost your Akkermansia. What do I mean by that? So Akkermansia mucinifila is one of the most abundant microbes in your gut. It lives in the mucus layer of your gut, and it makes up about 5% of the total bacteria in the gut of healthy adults. And we often find that when my clients struggle with their gut health, when they have bloating or constipation or things like that, they often have low levels of Akkermansia, or they have imbalanced levels of Akkermansia. And the fascinating thing about Akkermansia is found in both adult and infant gut, and it's present in the colostrum and breast milk. And that research seems to show that consumption during infancy is really key in seeding the infant gut with these beneficial gut bacteria. So the sort of environment that you are when you're a baby really informs how much Akkermansia you have. So Akkermansia feasts on certain proteins in the mucus, and they create short-chain fatty acids as byproducts, and these act as a fuel source for the cells lining the intestine. So this is really important because Akkermansia, the mucus breakdown by Akkermansia, is really important for making sure that your intestines are really, really healthy. And if you don't have enough Akkermansia in your gut, then you potentially just have a more tendency towards issues with a permeable gut. It's really fascinating. And the presence of Akkermansia in the adult gut is linked with lower rates of cardiovascular disease, protection against type 2 diabetes, obesity, and just chronic inflammation. And it is also linked with improved blood sugar control, lower blood lipid levels, and lower inflammatory bowel disease and other conditions as well. So it's a really fascinating bacteria and so important, and as I said, is quite often low when I do stool tests with clients. So as well as feeding on mucus proteins, Akkermansia populations are really supported by key prebiotics. Remember, we already talked about prebiotics. And the particular prebiotics that are important for Akkermansia are two. One is called polyphenols and the other is fructooligosaccharides. So polyphenols that naturally increase Akkermansia levels include dark berries and pomegranates and cranberries. So that's things like raspberries and blackberries and blueberries and strawberries. And then also grapes and apples as well are really beneficial for the Akkermansia. And then fructooligosaccharides, which is also known as FOS, they're chains of sugar molecules that are linked together that are this food source for bacteria in the colon. And these are found in things like onion, garlic, asparagus, banana, Jerusalem artichoke, and chicory. Now that might sound familiar because I've already mentioned that in the prebiotic section before. So there's a lot of information, but actually ultimately most of the foods that I mention are reoccurring. They come up again and again and again. The other thing about Akkermansia that is really interesting to know is that there is a link between physical fitness, in other words, exercise, and levels of Akkermansia. So they tend to be higher. Levels of Akkermansia tend to be higher in those who train or do some kind of exercise. People who have an active lifestyle tend to have more Akkermansia than those who are sedentary. Okay, and then my last two, I've got two more tips here on kind of gut health and making it sure it's healthy. One is to manage stress, manage your stress response, improve your stress resilience. So experiencing regular chronic stress really compromises the immune response. It starves the intestinal tract of blood and it compromises the function of the intestinal lining. So this is all starting to sound a bit familiar. If your intestinal lining is compromised, then it's not going to be as efficient as you want it to be, because it makes the gut more susceptible to invasion, which can cause gut lining permeability issues to increase, which allows larger proteins, larger particles of food proteins and microbial antigens to interact with the immune system, and this can trigger inflammation systemically and throughout the whole body. And this can show up in lots of different ways in the body, lots of different symptoms like mood swings and headaches, bloating, diarrhea, skin problems, fatigue, and allergies as well. So stress has a really big role to play in how well your gut is functioning. And finally, we started in your brain and we're ending out the other side. Make sure your bowels are working optimally. This is the final, very important part of your digestive system, your bowel movements. They need to be working effectively so you can eliminate waste products efficiently and in good time. So it's about, what does your poo look like and how often do you go? And how easy is it to pass? So make sure you're pooing regularly, but not too frequently, and you want it to be the right shape. In general, you want to poo at least once a day, and you want it to be fairly easy to pass. You want it to look a bit like a smooth sausage shape. If you poo too frequently, then your food is potentially moving through your body just too fast, and that means you don't get enough time to absorb all the nutrients efficiently, and so that could lead to nutrient insufficiency. On the flip side, if you go a few days without a poo on a regular basis, then you might find that you are struggling with constipation, which is where you get bloating and you might strain to poo. You might feel like you never really fully empty your bowels properly. So, what your poo looks like and how often you do it is really, really important. And as a nutritional therapist, it's one of the key questions I ask my clients is, what does your poo look like and how often do you do it? And we often spend a good 5 minutes talking about poo. I have no shame. And whether you're constipated or have loose stools like diarrhea, then these can be due to poor diet, it can be due to stress, it can be due to gut flora imbalances and poor digestive health, and it could be due to food sensitivities, medication, or it could be poor thyroid function. Both of those could be caused by any of those things, and this is where, like, when I work with clients, we really dig deep. We do lots of different testings just to work out what might be going on. And sometimes we don't need to do testing because we can just do it based on symptoms, based on food diary. And more often than not, when I suggest changes for them to make to their diets, they will often find that actually within a few weeks, those changes can really make a difference to their symptoms and eventually, hopefully, get rid of them entirely. So that was a lot of information I've just thrown at you. This is probably a longer episode than I have done for quite a while. And that is why I say, it is actually quite hard to distill gut health into a bite-sized bit of information because there's so much to it. And that's why when I work with clients, we work over a few months to kind of really drill down and work on this bit by bit, slowly and slowly. But the foundations of good nutrition, of good health and well-being when it comes to diet are often the same. It's make sure you eat lots of plant foods, make sure that you are getting enough hydration in, make sure that you're eating enough fibre and berries and green leafy vegetables and lots of variety, some fermented food, and make sure that you are sleeping enough, that you're not massively stressed out, and that you are chewing enough and that you practice that mindful eating. As you can see, it's not as simple as what is a supplement, what is a good probiotic that I can take for my gut health. There is so much more to it, and that is why I guess when you do struggle with gut issues, that working with a nutritional therapist can really help to just really dig deep and work out what is going on. But yeah, it's so much more than just exactly taking a supplement to help with your gut bacteria. So next week, starting on the 23rd of September, I am running another Reset meal plan challenge. And of course, being a nutritional therapist, I have planned all the meals in my meal plan with all the recipes to be balanced so that they are giving you the food that you need, that your gut bacteria love, that you need for great energy to look after your health and your well-being and for your immune system as well. So there are seasonal recipes, exactly with the vegetables that are available right now so that we eat in season wherever we can. So if you need someone to just tell you what to eat for 1 week, with a meal plan, with some recipes, with a shopping list and a prep plan so you can get ahead for the week, and a community to keep you motivated and to support you, then I would love for you to join us. I have put the link in the show notes for you to follow through yourself. It's £12 for the week and you get everything you need. All you have to do is shop for it and set aside some time, whether it's at the weekend to prep for the week ahead or just every day to cook the meals. All of the recipes are 40 minutes or less, so they don't take a lot of time in the kitchen, but they are all really tasty. And the most important thing, and the most important part of the whole week is the community. And I know from experience that people come to me for the content, for the meal plans, for the recipes, but they come away saying, that was an amazing community. I wish it didn't have to end. So if that sounds like what you need, then I'd love for you to join. It's starting on Monday, the 23rd of September, and you can sign up now using the link in the show notes. Otherwise, I hope this was a helpful episode, your Gut Health 101. Everything I know about the gut in half an hour. Really speedy delivery of everything I know. I hope that was useful. I'd love to know what you think and what are you going to change about your current diet or habits or lifestyle that are going to help your gut bacteria. Otherwise, I will see you next week for another episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. Bye for now.